Hello, my name's Al and today I'm going to run you through some do's and don'ts, some hints and tips for how to get the most out of your tubeless setup. As well as a wheel that's either tubeless compatible or you set up with tape to become tubeless compatible, you're going to need a tubeless specific tyre, either a UST tyre or a tubeless ready tyre, some sealant. It's helpful to have a sealant injector, makes things a little less messy, a valve core removal tool, and then you're going to need some way of inflating your tyre. So the most basic method is a large volume track pump. Next level up is something like the air shot that we have here. Some track pumps have something like this built in as well. Basically you charge a cylinder which can be released. Lots of pressure, all in one go, big volume to seat your tyre. When you're out and about, you're going to want some CO2 canisters and a CO2 inflator. To make tubeless setup as easy as possible, you need to make sure you've got the right components to start with. First of all, you've got your wheel or your rim. This wheel, for instance, is already tubeless specific, so it has a sealed rim bed, which is obviously essential without a tube to prevent the air from escaping out through the spoke holes. Alternatively, you can convert rims using tape or rim strips to create a sealed rim bed. It is, however, easier to use a tubeless specific rim. As well as the rim or the wheel, you're also going to need to get some proper tyres. So whilst you might be able to bodge regular tyres on there, it really does make things easier if you've got tubeless specific tyres. Now there's two main types on the market. You've got UST tyres and tubeless ready tyres. Different manufacturers call them different things. UST will be labelled up and that is basically a completely sealed tyre, so it is airtight. So if you didn't want to, you could run it without sealant, although we wouldn't recommend it. Tubeless ready tyres are lighter and they aren't airtight. They need sealant to become airtight, and as such, they're a little bit lighter, and as we'd recommend running sealant anyway, tubeless ready is generally the way to go. There's tons of different sealants out on the market. Some are firm favourites with riders like Stan's, but have a try them and see which one you prefer. The sealant not only seals punctures, but it also helps to seal the tyre onto the rim bed. So it prevents it from leaking air over time and also makes it easier to fit. So I'm going to show you various ways of inflating your tubeless tyre with a minimum of hassle. So first up, we've got our deflated tyre here. It's got a bit of sealant in it. It's a bit old, but it's lubricated the bead. So having a lubricated bead is really helpful. So whether it's with sealant or with some soapy water, it's really good to help the bead to slip into place. So this is generally the first port of call as far as inflation's concerned. This is a high volume track pump, and the idea is that we're trying to deliver as much air as possible in a short space of time. And that's it. So we delivered enough air there to pop the bead into place, and it's sitting there with 20 psi in. So this is nice and easy. This tyre's been on this rim for a while, so it seats a lot easier than, say, a brand new one might, or if you've got one knocking around in the shed that's, say, a mud tyre or whatever that you're putting on for the winter, it might give you a lot more trouble than that. So there's various things that you can do, and we're going to step things up a notch. So before you get too hot and sweaty pumping away with your track pump, next thing to try is get your valve core tool and remove the valve core. The valve itself is quite restrictive, and that will allow a lot more air to pass into the tyre per stroke. It will make things a lot easier and you're much more likely to seat it first time and more quickly. The best way to seat a tubeless tyre is undoubtedly with a compressor, but they're pretty expensive, even though you can get them for less than about 100 quid these days. Still fairly pricey. At home, you can get hold of something like this. It's called an air shot, and this is a cylinder which you charge with air from your track pump, and it has a valve which allows you to unleash all that air, so that pretty big volume of air in one quick shot, which will help to seat your tyre. This comes with an adapter which presses straight into the valve with the core removed, or you can remove the adapter and screw it into place on the valve with the core in place. So we're just going to press this straight into the valve with no core. And then we're going to flick the switch, unleash the air, and hopefully seat the tyre. There we go, easy peasy. Once your tyre's seated, then you're going to have to remove whatever it is that you inflated it with. You're going to lose pretty much all the air, but that's not a big deal. We're just going to put the core back in as quick as we can. So we lost most of the air there, but the bead is still seated, so a bit of quick work with the track pump and it'll be ready to go. When you're out on the trail, obviously you're not going to have room for a track pump or a compressor in your bag. So what you're going to need to pack is some CO2 cartridges and an inflator. A mini pump is going to make it really hard to reseat your tyre. So if you've just repaired a tear in the tyre or managed to get the sealant to seal up a larger than normal hole and your bead has become unseated, then you're going to need to reseat it. And yeah, a mini pump isn't really going to cut the mustard. So this is where the CO2 comes into play. So we'll screw our cartridge onto our inflator. Make sure you cover it because things get very cold, or stick your gloves on. So we're going to release all of the CO2 in one go, and that should seat the tyre. If you've tried absolutely everything to get your tyre to seat and inflate and you're not getting anywhere, then one thing that you can try is simply to fit a tube. Now this isn't a long-term thing. Just leave the tube in your chosen tyre overnight, and that will help the tyre to seat and to sit properly. You'll be able to seat one bead at least, and then in the morning, remove one bead, take the tube out, and then you've only got half your job to do. So over time, your sealant will dry out. So every 3 months or so, it's well worth checking it. If you find yourself getting punctures which aren't sealing, then definitely check it. There's a few ways of doing it. One way is with an injector like this, which keeps things nice and clean. Way to do that is to remove the valve core and then fill this up with your sealant. Make sure it's really well shaken up. This Shimano stuff is really thick, so the particles tend to stay in the liquid, but some of the thinner sealants, you need to make sure that they're really well shaken. Otherwise you won't get any of the little bits of rubber which help to seal the holes in the fluid, and it won't do its job. Problem with injecting it is that it can clog the valve, and you're not removing any of the dried sealant that's in the tyre. So it is better, at least sometimes, don't just keep pumping sealant in there because your wheels will weigh a ton. It's better to remove the tyre, or at least one bead, clean out any of the old sealant and replace it. So in order to do that, all we're going to do is pop one of the beads off the rim, and then using paper towel, we're going to remove the old sealant and replace with new. To be honest, this stuff is still pretty runny, it's not too bad. So we're going to remove this for demonstration purposes. Sometimes it's pretty well stuck in there, and it might take a bit of rubbing. Sometimes it'll come out in a big like rubber ball. Just take that out, remove what you can, and then replace it with the correct amount of sealant for the size of your tyre. So when we add the sealant, we make sure that it's shaken upside down so all those particles go into the tyre. And this has graduations along the side. which we're going to use to make sure we're putting in the correct amount. And then we're going to refit the bead. Some sealants will come with a measuring cup, so you know exactly the right amount to put in. If you're fitting a new tyre, make sure that the bead is lubricated, either with some sealant or some soapy water, just to help it to seat. And then we're ready to re-inflate the tyre. Over time, you might find it becomes harder to inflate your tyre. The reason for that will normally be that your valve has become clogged with sealant. So this is your standard tubeless valve, so it's got a rubber seat here which seals the rim bed, valve cap just like a regular tube, lock nut, and this locking collar which screws down the thread of the valve and seals it against the rim. And this particular valve has a removable core. It's always best to use those with a removable core. Helps with inflation and cleaning and so forth. Take the core out. You might be able to see that's a bit gammy in there. You pick off any old sealant, taking care not to damage it. Have a look inside the valve stem. Clean out any old sealant that's got stuck in there. Run a pipe cleaner through it, or as I'm doing with a pick, just picking out any bits of sealant, just to help the flow of air, make it much easier to inflate. Clean the base of the valve as well. So if there's big lumps of sealant on there, then that'll probably cause a leak. So we'll get rid of those, pick them off. Take care not to damage the rubber. And then we're going to refit the valve core. Just nip it up with your valve core tool. That's ready to go back into the rim. So our tyre's got fresh sealant in it, the valve's all nice and clean, so we're just going to reseat the tyre and set our tyre pressure. Pump's registering about 25 psi. A lot of people will run super low pressures in their tubeless tyre setups. I'd say initially, when you first set your tyres up, it's a good idea to drop, say, 5 psi from what you would usually run. See how you get along. A lot of people make the mistake of running their tyres too soft, and they'll have issues with the tyres rolling on the corners. Unless you've got a very stiff sidewall, then yeah, the tyre's going to be rolling on the rim, and you may also stand a chance of burping it more easily, which is basically if the bead loses contact with the rim, then air will escape. So we don't want that happening. So yeah, err on the side of caution and drop it down slowly until you find your favourite pressure. So that's it. Tyre all sorted, ready to go out and hit the trails. Thanks for watching. See you next time.